The morning I scared a squirrel off my tomato vines with an old pellet gun. I had no idea I was lighting the match that would burn down 15 years of HOA tyranny. My name's Jack Rollins. I moved to Meadowglen Estates for some peace. A patch of green, and maybe a few tomatoes grown by my own hand. But I didn't know I was moving into the kingdom of Marlene Connors, the HOA president with a taste for power and a Napoleon complex that would make history books blush. It all started because of squirrels. Those little garden terrorists had chewed through my irrigation lines, torn up my trellises, and wiped out weeks of work. After trying every humane method known to mankind, from repellents to owl statues to peppermint, oily finally snapped. I took my old air rifle, aimed from the porch, and popped a warning shot. Didn't hit the squirrel, just made sure he got the message. 24 hours later, I got a bright red envelope from the HOA, $750 fine for unauthorized hunting and wildlife harassment. Signed by Marlene herself, in dramatic cursive. Now, I could have grumbled, paid the fine, and moved on. But something about the smug little note scribbled at the bottom, "Consider this your final warning," rubbed me raw. I marched over to the HOA office, which was conveniently located in Marlene's oversized tutor at the front of the subdivision. Her secretary, a woman who looked like she hadn't smiled since 1987, reluctantly let me in. Marlene didn't even stand up. "Mr. Rollins, if you can't follow community rules, perhaps you're better suited for a more rural lifestyle." She actually said that, like I was some kind of feral coyote. And that's when I knew this wasn't about squirrels. It was about control. So I started digging. I pulled out the original HOA handbook, all 317 pages of it, and buried between regulations on mailbox shapes and the forbidden hues of beige was a clause about non-permissible hunting methods within community borders. But here's where it got interesting. My property, along with a few others on the edge of Meadowglen, was originally zoned agricultural. That little nugget led me down a rabbit hole of dusty county records, old deeds, and legal jargon. Turns out, my property had a grandfathered clause, one that allowed traditional pest control methods including, yes, air rifles, and even more if that right was ever challenged. It triggered a deed clause requiring a full reassessment of all HOA regulations on affected properties. In simple terms, Marlene had pulled the pin on a legal grenade. But I didn't go public just yet. Instead, I connected with some neighbors. First was Lisa Moreno, a freelance reporter who lived 3 doors down. She'd been quietly collecting stories about HOA overreach for years, waiting for someone to help blow it wide open. Then came Mr. Riggs, a retired civil engineer whose property line had mysteriously been redrawn after he refused to vote for a new landscaping contract, one that just happened to benefit Marlene's cousin. And finally, there was Eileen, the quiet old woman who everyone assumed was senile. She turned out to be a retired court clerk with decades of notes, recordings, and HOA meeting minutes. And oh, did she have receipts? We formed a little resistance. While Lisa dug into financial ties, Eileen traced rule changes, and I had my Sistera property lawyer in Chicago review the deed clause. She called me 2 days later, laughing. "Jack, you basically own a nuke. That clause forces a full HOA charter review if traditional land use rights are interfered with. You can flip the entire board on its head. So we planned our move. At the next HOA meeting, Marlene stood at her podium, reading off violations with the smugness of a game show host. When she reached my name, she launched into a speech about dangerous behavior and community safety. I stood calmly. Per Article 8, subsection 14 of the original Meadow Glen deed, I invoke the Protected Land Use Clause. By issuing a fine against a lawful act of pest control, you've triggered a mandatory review of HOA governance over grandfathered properties. Silence. Then, Eileen stood up and handed over minutes from a 2005 HOA meeting where Marlene had acknowledged those original exemptions. Lisa followed up by projecting documents showing shady financial ties between Marlene and contracted vendors. And just to cap it off, my sister appeared via Zoom, walking everyone through the legal consequences of ignoring deed clauses protected under state law. Marlene tried to adjourn the meeting, but the board voted to proceed. And in a rare moment of justice, a motion was passed to freeze all fines, strip Marlene of executive authority during the review, and launch a full audit. 2 weeks later, a county survey revealed Marlene's backyard pool encroached 10 feet into protected green space. The same green space she fined others for stepping onto. She resigned the next morning. We didn't just win a petty battle about squirrels. We exposed a whole network of abuse, favoritism, and manipulation. Today, Meadow Glen is quieter, fairer. The rules still exist, but now they're actually enforced equally. My tomatoes are thriving. And the squirrels, well, they still visit, but they don't linger. And the best part, right at the edge of my lawn, there's a little wooden sign that reads, "Land protected under historical pest control rights." Let me know in the comments, have you ever had to stand up to a neighborhood bully or HOA madness? I want to hear your story, because sometimes the best way to take down a petty tyrant is with a tomato vine and an old pellet gun.